Alright, it is time for another drawing in the dark. My name is Levi Smith, and today we are going to be drawing Dr. Doom. As you can see here on the left, I have already done some preliminary sketches and stuff. I did that for the patrons. Today, though, I am going to be working on this actual workup here, using all of that research. As you can see, I am just putting together a basic kind of pose, getting in the general costume features and stuff, and just building it up. Basically, as far as the process goes, you're going to start off with a concept. You want to know like the who, the what, the where, the when, that kind of stuff, before you even really start drawing and start visualizing to some degree what you want to put together, really. And then from there, you're going to do the general layout, which we've already worked through here on this one. In the case of like a figure, getting the rough placements down, proportions, pose, elements like that. And then from there, you want to start working it up, doing the development phase of the design, where you start, dialing in on a lot of the details and stuff. I really do try to keep things as generalized as possible for as long as I can. Slowly working my way in towards details, towards that kind of rendering, so you can see that I'm really just focused on, and this is really kind of like like a typical kind of Dr. Doom pose. Nothing too wild. I didn't get too out of control with like the costume or stuff like that. Although I do work it up and detail it as I go and stuff. I also have a particular angle to this one, along with a lot of the other elements and stuff that I've been working on, where I want it to have like a darker vibe, a creepier vibe. And a lot of that's going to be done with like detail rendering and working out some lighting effects and stuff like that. One of the things that's interesting with speeding all of this up is it really takes a lot of the hesitation, the thinking, and stuff like that, and kind of erases it in a way where you just don't see it. I mean, obviously it's all sped up so fast that it looks like I'm just going in, directly cranking away. So Dr. Doom, easily one of the most iconic and coolest comic book villains, I would say, of all time, at least in Western comics. And one of the interesting things about him is that as far as like his power set and stuff, what his abilities are, they're pretty vague. I don't know if a lot of casual fans would be able to quickly identify exactly what his abilities are, or exactly what his motives are necessarily. One of the really interesting aspects that I always liked about Dr. Doom was that he had this claim that he would be the only one well suited towards running the world. And a couple of instances, it's almost like he's been shown to be correct in this. I think that's one of the more interesting angles from him, is because he's like a world leader class villain, where he really is kind of like after a world domination kind of angle. He's incredibly smart, on the level of like at least Tony Stark or Reed Richards. Obviously, he really is one of the villains that does come with enough specificity for familiarity and like a foundation, but enough vagueness to him that you can kind of mold him to your purposes in a way. And he's one of my favorites, definitely. If you see Dr. Doom show up, then it's a big deal. And often though, even when he shows up, it's still not even him, because it's a Doom bot. Especially when he does lose, which does make for a really fun kind of angle for his defeats and stuff that doesn't necessarily depower him or make him feel kind of feeble. You know, the more a villain loses, the less intimidating, the lower the stakes are when that villain does show up. And Doctor Doom, you know, always is a high stakes kind of villain. You know, I mean, I've got my favorite villains, but really who I think are the best villains in comic books really these days, my top 5, like Ozymandias and the Watchmen, one of the coolest, smartest villains, one of the most serious villains in the biz, as it were. You know, my number 4 would be Kingpin. You know, he's a really versatile villain. He really is kind of like a reflection of like mafias and organized crime and stuff like that. So I like his usability as far as, you know, an ongoing, repeatable villain goes. All right, yeah, and so, you know, Kingpin does have there's a lot of places that you can fit Kingpin in, and it'll make sense. My number 3, Carnage, from, you know, the Spider-Verse. I guess that's the best way to call like that angle of the Marvel Universe. But he is chaotic, powerful, relentless, totally, you know, amoral, unscrupulous, just a scary monster of a being, and with the powers that he has, can really do a lot of damage. I wasn't a huge fan of the Maximum Carnage storyline, although, you know, it's better than, say, like the Maximum Clonage one by far. It did, to a degree, show how, you know, just wildly destructive and powerful Carnage could be. His chaoticness, the anarchy of it, the lack of planning, the lack of direction to move in. And then my number 2 is Doctor Doom. You know, this guy is just, you know, he's big time. You know, and he doesn't need to be on a cosmic level like Thanos or something like that to be a big threat, a big multiversal kind of threat on so many different levels. I mean, he's just Doctor Doom. The same level of magical abilities, basically, that Doctor Strange has. Same level of intellect as Tony Stark or Reed Richards. And the resources of a small country. And even that sovereignty. You know, I mean, he is the sovereign of a nation, of Latveria. And then in my number 1 is the Joker. Really, I mean, he is the comic book villain. You know, the Joker is chaotic, but he's a good planner. He has no powers. He's not super strong in any way. He kind of, you know, fits into the mafia, organized crime kind of elements. I mean, forward thinking is Ozymandias. He's as dangerous as Carnage and as chaotic as Carnage. I mean, he really is just, you know, the best villain. And you know, there's a few in here that people would name that I wouldn't necessarily put on my top 5 list. Venom, to me, is not so much of a villain so much anymore. I think that he really fits into that same kind of anti-hero bucket as Deadpool. I put Harley Quinn there as well. Magneto kind of fits into there. He is, you know, Magneto's kind of like in this, you know, camp of like Thanos or even Lex Luthor, where it's not that he's wrong, it's that a lot of the methods and a lot of the motives that they follow can be villainous. I mean, now comic book Thanos versus like Marvel Universe, the cinematic universe Thanos, you know, there's definitely some evolution and stuff there. I do like the movie version of Thanos more than the comic version. He definitely has more dimension, more depth. His philosophy was quite a bit more compelling, you know, and that's one of those things that made Thanos so great as a modern villain, is that, you know, his points were really identifiable, and not so much in the same way that, say, like modern Joker, you know, like the Joaquin Phoenix, you know, can be identifiable. Thanos is definitely, you know, on a different scale than that. I do like to bring up the Red Skull, because he is also one of these kind of like archetypical villains where I think, you know, and he might be a little bit more of a period piece kind of villain, where it's hard for him to fit outside of the context of like Nazis and Hydra and stuff like that. he is definitely one of those more like mustache twirling kind of comic book villains that I really do like to see. His role in the comic book version of Old Man Logan was just unhinged and fantastic, and definitely it didn't feel like it was out of place at all in that. And if you haven't actually read that comic book, Old Man Logan, the comic book version is just on a whole nother level. That's really one of the things that I love about comics. And when people have the kind of courage to tell a comic story the way that they did with that was just fantastic. I really like to see more comic books done on that kind of approach than some of these more like hyper drama, soap opera, ongoing, never ends kind of stuff. I'm really more interested in monster of the week, mystery of the week, puzzle of the week kind of stories, that are way more encapsulated, beginning, middle, end, get on with it. I don't necessarily want to see Spider-Man in a day-to-day, in between the battles kind of storytelling, as much as I really want to see versus Dr. Octopus versus the Vulture versus Carnage versus Venom. That's really what I want. That's honestly, the kind of comics I grew up on, and the stuff that I'm just still generally more interested in. And as far as like the power fantasy aspect of it, that can go a lot of different ways. I don't mind the power fantasy aspect. I don't mind it shifting from that male power fantasy towards more ambivalent or more even diversified kind of power fantasies. That doesn't bother me at all. But make it crazy, make it visually weird, make it stand out in a way that helps those concepts that you're introducing and the arguments that you're making in the story stick better. Because like with Transmetropolitan and stuff like that, it is just so bizarre that the points that are being made philosophically, religiously, politically, morally, I don't know, they become more memorable in a way, and they can really bring out the point in a way that doesn't get people to immediately recoil for whatever identification purpose, like, oh, this is like mad at this group of people or that group of people, or me or them, or you can really disguise a lot of stuff and make a point when the representation is outside of commonality. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, comic books have been doing that for 50, 60 years, Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of my thoughts on that. And as far as like comic book villains go, I love comic book villains. I mean, as you can see. So, and that's where we end it here. This kind of zombified, evil, Doombot kind of thing. I like how he turned out. Don't forget, if you've gotten this far, please and thank you, like and subscribe. Check out our podcast wherever you can find podcasts, Pop Culture Classics, where Kenny and I talk about these kinds of stuff, comic books and movies and music and stuff like that. I've got art books available on Amazon. Look up Jade Monkey Productions, look up the activity book, The Curse of the Jade Monkey. And then, of course, the Patreon. Everyone's got one. Patreon.com/mopandbucket. It's all at the bottom of these end cards and all that stuff. Check us out. It's a great place to support us and stuff. Of course, all the links are in the description. Go check those out. Have a good one out there, and we will catch you later.